Hello there, time for a bit of Doctor Who unboxing. Hello, welcome back. My name is Paul Mount. You're very welcome to my world of stuff. Very special message. Thank you very much for your patience and forbearance, all of you out there who have been waiting for new content from me from the last week or so. Thank you particularly for those as well who put messages on my last Back Soon video, which I put up a couple of days ago, just explaining about my enduring health problems. I'm back. I still feel a bit ropey. I'm still a bit chesty. I'm still coughing quite a bit. But I feel better. I feel better in myself, and I feel more as if I want to do things, which is quite timely because there are things to be done. Lots of new films coming out in the next couple of weeks that I want to talk about. A couple of retro films I want to talk about, and a bit of post I want to talk about, which arrived yesterday. It's currently Sunday afternoon. This arrived yesterday, as I suspected that it would. I sort of hoped to do an unboxing video yesterday, but it was pouring down with rain, and I just couldn't be bothered to leave the house and come up to the cinema room / studio where I record my videos. But today it's a bit nicer and I feel a bit better, and I've had a chance to actually watch some of this. So even though I'm unboxing it for you, it's actually been opened about 24 hours ago, and I've had a chance to watch some of the special features and some of the episodes. So I'll be able to give you not just an unboxing, but an overview of what the box set is actually like. So here it is. It's season 15 of Doctor Who, which arrived yesterday from HMV. It's due out tomorrow, but I think a lot of people are getting their pre-orders a bit early. So we'll just take it out of the box. Here's the box. And here it is. I mean, you'll have seen other unboxing videos. You'll have seen all the images. But this is what it looks like. Season 15 on Blu-ray. The latest of the Doctor Who collection sets. They really are a glorious collection of Blu-rays. It's the ultimate edition and release of these Doctor Who episodes in buffed up to as good as HD quality as you can get for material recorded on videotape, with glorious special features and a huge collection of archive stuff. It's another great set. As you can see here, we have the very nice cover drawn by Lee Binding, which as usual depicts the creatures and monsters of the series, with the Doctor, of course, Tom Baker, here centre stage. The thing about season 15, before I actually show you it, I've always thought and voiced the opinion that I think season 15 is where Doctor Who started to wobble a little bit, because it was in the year of and just after the arrival of Star Wars. And I think that Star Wars and films like Close Encounters, all these films that are suddenly appearing, redefine people's expectations of science fiction with huge spaceships and battle scenes and space scenes and things that are obviously way out of the budget of a modestly funded BBC science fiction show. Whilst Doctor Who had survived for years and years on the reputation of its stories, the quality of its script and its acting and its ambitious, if not always successful, visuals, I think people now perhaps started to think Doctor Who was looking a little bit rickety. And of course, this also coincided with a difficult time for the BBC with its licence fee funding. Inflation was rushing through the roof. Budgets were getting tight, and it was getting harder and harder for the BBC to make compelling looking Doctor Who anymore. So I think there were two things that worked against the show: competition from the cinema and inflation, and also possibly a very minor thing, which isn't as evident on these episodes as I thought it might be, Tom Baker's increasing grip on the series. Having played the part now for 3 years, this is his 4th season, he obviously, and not unreasonably, felt that he knew the show a lot better than anybody else. There was a new producer on board, Graham Williams, who took over from Philip Hinchcliffe. He was sort of tasked with toning down the violence that had characterised the series in the last couple of years. Or not characterised it, but underscored the stories, made them a bit gritty and a bit more adult. And he had to sort of rein Tom in, which was impossible to do because Tom Baker is Tom Baker. And I think Tom's performance became a bit more flippant and a bit more comedic, to the detriment of the character on the show. And I think this all sort of starts in season 15. You can see his performance becoming a little bit looser, not sloppier. He's still extremely charismatic when he's on the screen. You know, your screen is dominated by Tom Baker when he's there. But he doesn't quite have that sort of sense of mystique, perhaps, that he had in his first 3 seasons, when he was this slightly cold and detached alien that you think you trust, but you're not entirely sure because there's things going on that you're not aware of. Here, he's a bit more playful. He's starting to get a bit more cheeky, I suppose. Anyway, that's just my view of season 15 as I think it's possibly been perceived over the years. Let's go in and actually look at the set. Okay, so here's the box set. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through all this because the format of the sets is pretty much the same, and you will have seen other videos and you probably even got your set by now. But here it is, as I said, the cover with the Lee binding artwork. As usual, comes in its J card, which gives you all the information about the episodes and the special features. And that, of course, slips easily back onto the discs of the box set. There it is. There's the cover. On the spine, of course, we have the uniform Doctor Who, the collection. I'm interested to see that they're sticking to the Chibnall era Doctor Who logo. I think fans would probably be a bit of an uproar if it was changed now at this late stage, if we started changing logos, because fans do like uniformity on spines, on shelves, and I think I'm one of those who tends to agree with that sort of thing. I think they all look nice lined up when they have the same design. On the back, we have a very nice piece of art which displays a scene from Underworld, one of the lesser regarded serials of the story, it has to be said. The TARDIS in the nebula with the, I think it's the P7E spaceship approaching. So we open it up, and of course we just got the discs. Disc 1 is the Horror of Fang Rock, and they're all a fairly uniform sort of standard. I think that in the background of each of these, I think it's the symbol from the Sunmakers. We've got Tom Baker, we've got K9 for the Invisible Enemy. Of course, that's the story where he makes his first appearance. We've got fairly good portrait of Louise Jameson as Leela, who of course is the Doctor's companion throughout the season, on image of the Fendal. Then we have the Doctor again himself, the Doctor himself from the Sunmakers. Then we have the Doctor again in Underworld. Then we have Leela as an Time Lord outcast from Invasion of Time. And then we have the bonus disc, disc 7, which has the special features, which again has got an image of Tom Baker, this time from Invasion of Time. The set then obviously goes on to include the usual flap with a nice piece of artwork of the Doctor and Leela arriving on Gallifrey at the beginning of Invasion of Time. You open that up. Very nice piece of artwork from Horror of Fang Rock, which is, incidentally, not only my favourite story in this set, one of my favourite Doctor Who stories of all time. Love it. It's a really good, creepy, atmospheric, gothic set. When you open it up, then, you get the usual thing, a little leaflet about Doctor Who merchandise, books, and so on. You get then the usual very nice booklet, which looks at the production and history of this particular batch of episodes. I saw another YouTuber commenting recently. He's never read these booklets, and I must admit I've not read them cover to cover, but they are very nice new pieces of artwork, some nice colour photographs. Again, I think these all put together would be a very interesting sort of history of the production of Doctor Who over the years. When the flap itself is open, we have this really nice picture of the interior of the TARDIS with K9, and an image of, on the scanner screen there, I think it's the Bayal Foundation from the Invisible Enemy. So that's the box set, season 15. So yeah, there we have it then, season 15. I didn't want to spend too long just opening up the box and showing you, because it is, you know, if you've got one of these, you'll know the format, you'll know how it looks, the box, the nicely stacked discs, the booklets, just give you an example to show you what's in store with this particular set. What I would like to do now is talk about the contents, because I have, over the last day since it was arrived, had a chance to look at quite a lot of the content, particularly the new special features, and they for me are always the main attraction of these sets, because I'm very familiar with practically all the Doctor Who stories. I wouldn't say I could recite them off line by line, but it's pretty close on occasion. So I'm always interested in how the people who put these discs together, predominantly I think it's Chris Chapman, who produces and directs a lot of the material and collates these releases, finds new spins on material that fans are very familiar with, without appearing too obscure and too off the wall, to make them interesting and entertaining. And I have to say they've done it again here with a really good set of extra material. You get the usual stuff that's been ported over from previous DVD releases. I'm never sure what stuff as to previous releases and what stuff is new, because there's always new archive bits turning up. I think there's a couple of new commentaries from Tom Baker on a couple of episodes. I'm not massive on commentary, so I haven't gone taking a deep dive into those yet. I'm more interested in the documentaries and features themselves. There are some new special effects on the Horror of Fang Rock. I haven't looked at that yet, because I think the Horror of Fang Rock is such a good story, and I think that a lot of the effects are very appropriate for the time the episode was actually made, particularly the rootin' creature which appears at the end, which is this sort of unearthly looking gelatinous blob that sort of slides up the steps and quivers, and apparently it wasn't a physical prop that was there, it was something that was overlaid later. I understand from having seen the trailer for this box set that it's a bit more of a CGI octopoid type thing. And I often find with the new CGI effects that are put on these classic Doctor Who stories, they do jar, they stand out a bit, because it's not what was in the minds of the creators at the time. And I do think that forcing CGI onto 1970s material isn't necessarily a good thing, unless you can do it in a sympathetic way. So I'm not necessarily slating the effects on here, because I haven't seen them yet, but it's not something I'm rushing to look at, particularly because that's a favourite story of mine. In terms of the new special features, then there's some really good stuff on here, as always. The Prime special feature, which is an absolute must and is just beyond fascinating, is, I think it's a 97-minute piece, this is as long as a feature film, on Graham Williams, the producer of Doctor Who produced these seasons 16, 15, 16 and 17. Season 17 is already available. Season 16, the key to time, is yet to come. Graham Williams had the difficult task, as I mentioned earlier, of taking over the production of Doctor Who at a time of straitened budgets, and the BBC coming under a lot of criticism for the show's content, where it felt, certainly some corners, particularly the dreaded Mary Whitehouse and her National Viewers and Listeners Association, felt that Doctor Who was going too far, pushing it too far. BBC agreed. Unfortunately, they didn't put up a fight, and Doctor Who left its most productive and creative period in years, really, a bit too early. What we get then is a season of very enjoyable stories, and this documentary about Graham Williams is fascinating, because really not much is known about Graham Williams. Doctor Who fans all know the name. We might have read a couple of interviews, seen a couple of dodgy convention videos. We don't know much about the man and his history and his past. And this beautifully put together documentary fills us in fantastically. And his slightly melancholic and disappointing career, I think. Hugely imaginative. He was a writer. He wrote a lot of scripts. He script edited a lot of TV series in the 60s and into the 70s. But I think he was somebody who felt he underachieved. He never fulfilled his true potential. I think that's something which is probably true of a lot of people, particularly behind the scenes who work on TV. I'm not sure if it's true these days, but I think certainly in the 70s, perhaps it was easier for people to fall down the cracks, and I think that Graham Williams probably did. He comes across as somebody who was a Doctor Who at a time when it was not exactly in crisis, but it was under scrutiny. And I think it's Louise Jameson, who plays Leela, who says in the documentary that he was a producer. Producers they have to distance themselves a little bit. They have to be not exactly feared, but respected. And I think that he wanted to be liked and respected. And I think it's difficult when you're in a position of power. You sometimes have to make hard decisions for a show to be liked by everybody. And I think that possibly was an issue he had on Doctor Who. He found it a tough show to make and a tough show to steer, because of the way the things were done and the things that had to be done. It's a fascinating documentary. There's a lot of input from his widow, his children, and the tragic story. I mean, I won't go into spoil your show, and I don't know how well known the end of his story actually is. It doesn't end quite the way I thought it did, let's put it like that. But it's a fascinating story of a man whose career sort of drifted. He was prone to great bouts of depression and professional doubt and uncertainty, but it's a fascinating story, and it certainly makes me think a bit more about Graham Williams as a creator and the issues he had throughout his life, not just making Doctor Who. Elsewhere, in terms of new special features, there's a very nice feature, Tom Talks. I think this is part of a longer interview that was done a couple of years ago. It's Tom just riffing on things about his life, not so much about Doctor Who, about his attitude towards things. This was recorded, I think, when Tom was 88, because he mentions about being 88, and of course he's now 90. And certainly at this point, when this was done, he was on great form, full of his usual twinkling wit, and it just makes you think that if anybody on earth should be immortal, it's probably Tom Baker, because he's such a unique voice, such a unique personality. That's really well worth looking at. In terms of the other new stuff, there's a very nice piece on the making of Fang Rock, where the ubiquitous Toby Hidoki takes Louise Jameson to a lighthouse on Beachy Head. Of course, the story was set in and around a lighthouse, but was actually filmed in the old Pebble Mill studios in Birmingham. And he basically recounts the story of how the story was filmed in difficult circumstances. There's contributions from other creative people who were involved in the show at the time. Some archive interview with the late Paddy Russell, who directed it, just talking about how they made a fairly big drama at studios that weren't used to making fairly big dramas. And it turned out so well as it did. And there's contributions from various members of the cast. Excellent, and it's well overdue because it's such a good story. We also get the inevitable, but always welcome, Matthew Sweet interview. Not every set has them, but they're always enlivened by the appearance of one of those interviews. This time he spends an hour and a quarter or so chatting to Louise Jameson, who is a thread throughout the set, really. She appears a lot in it, in various archive convention footage and the behind the sofa features, and she talks to Matthew Sweet about her career and her attitude towards acting. She's very much an actress. She's very much into the craft of the performance and the narrative, and she talks about her work as the piece, things like that. She's very much focused on her career. If you just want Doctor Who anecdotes, you're going to have to wait 20-25 minutes, because there's a lot of build up into her process and her early days, which there should be, because there's a lot more to actresses like her than just Leela in Doctor Who for a year. But she's obviously very passionate about that character. She's returned to the character on Big Finish many times. Of course, she does the convention circuit. She's an interesting and engaging and candid interviewee. She as she admits to Matthew, she tells stories that she's not told before. It's really interesting, and he really gets the best out of his subjects. He is a terrific Doctor Who interviewer. We also get the usual behind the sofa features. They're nice little throwaway 25-minute bits where various Doctor Who alumni watch truncated versions of the stories and comment on them. And it's the usual, it is like people who know a bit about Doctor Who, but not a lot, watching it and enjoying it and making sarcastic comments. You get Colin Baker, Janet Fielding and Sarah Sutton. You get Matthew Waterhouse, who played Adric, of course, teamed up with Katie Manning for some reason. And you get Toby Haydock, Louise Jameson and Betson Roberts, who's the widow of Pennant Roberts, who directed a lot of Tom Baker serials. In fact, cast Louise Jameson as Leela. And they're nice, they're good fun. They're the sort of thing you only really watch once, because it's amusing to watch their reactions and anecdotes and so on. But I think if you're a Doctor Who aficionado of some years as I am, you sort of want a bit more in-depth stuff. And I think that's pretty much it for all the new stuff. It's great. It's another great set. I mean, it really is. And no matter how many times you see these episodes, you can always look at them again and see them in a new light. For example, this morning, Sunday morning, I watched a couple of episodes of The Sunmakers. Not a story I've ever had a massively high regard for. Louise Jameson is one of her favourites, but I've always found it a little bit, because it's that sort of Robert Holmes's little dig at the tax system, because he had a prohibitive tax bill and he felt he wanted to take his frustrations out on the Inland Revenue. It's a good story. We watch it again now, and I watched it again today, looking great on Blu-ray. And you do get a feel for the performances, and Tom Baker is still halfway between goofball and mysterious, otherworldly alien adventurer. It's a really good story, actually. It's very cleverly written, great performances, quite right performances from the guest cast, works really well. And I've watched the Behind the Sofa with Underworld, and even that seemed a lot better than I remembered it. So, although I maintain my position that this is where Doctor Who started its wobble, it's still a very entertaining batch of episodes. And of course, you've got the peerless horror of Fang Rock and the superb Images of Fendal, which is one of the last sort of gothic-y horror Doctor Who stories. And the season finishes with Invasion of Time, which was written on the lamb by Graham Williams in the space of a week. And it's all over the place, but there's a lot of good stuff in it, and it's quite good fun. So all in all, I would say the season 15 is another must-watch. It's another must-purchase for Doctor Who fans. I mean, I purchased all these sets, even those later seasons that I'm not so sure about, not keen on. This is actually one of the better sets, because it does make you realise this is a very good season of Doctor Who, as it sort of evolves and becomes something a bit different to what it had been before. And that's something that Doctor Who does every few years. It sort of pivots a little bit and goes in a new direction and tells stories in a different style. Highly recommended. And I give Doctor Who, the collection, season 15, big solid 8.5 out of 10. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this little look at the discs. And my little review of the contents and features and so on. Let me know if you've bought the set, if you're going to buy the set, what you thought of it, what your favourite new feature is, what your favourite stories are. And I will see you soon for some more content, and hopefully there'll be a lot less sniffing. Although hopefully I'll cut all the sniffing out so you won't be aware of anything. Right, I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking this stuff.